Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety podcast. My name is Jason Van Schie, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area. But before I introduce our guest and topic for today, allow me to introduce my co-host, Joelle Mitchell. How are you today, Joelle?
I was very happy to read the news this morning, Jason, and find that Cleo Smith has been found and returned to her family. So for people unfamiliar, the last 2 weeks in Western Australia, police have been trying to find a 4-year-old girl who was abducted from her family tent on a camping trip. And against all odds, she was found alive last night and has been returned to her family. So I think probably very few of us were expecting that to be the outcome of this story, but I felt a real sense of relief when I saw it this morning, and it was surprising actually how strong my response to that news was, given that I don't know them at all.
Yeah, no, it was interesting, right? I mean, the girl's name was Cleo, and my daughter's name is Chloe. And one of the photos is an outfit that Chloe actually has. And it's just like, well, it's a bit too close to home.
I think it is. And as a parent, it's just one of those things that, like, it's a cliche to say, but it really is just your worst nightmare. And I remember, the William Tyrrell story from a few years ago. And my son was a similar age then. And yeah, it's just awful. So I'm so relieved and happy for the family that she's been found.
Yeah, I think the whole state is feeling that same relief at the moment.
Yeah,
except for our developers who had no idea there was a child missing.
That's true. Yeah, our developers just have no idea that there's even a world outside of the internet. I think they just
they only watch things on demand. They don't watch current events.
They don't. No. News. What's news?
Yeah.
No.
It's what's ever on a subreddit. I think
that's
news,
it.
So.
They might follow news about the NBN maybe or tech companies, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think you're pushing it there even as well.
Yeah.
Maybe what current computer games are coming out or something.
That's probably more likely. Yeah, they're the worst.
Yeah, but great sense of relief here.
Yeah,
and I think for a lot of Australians as well.
Because camping's such a sort of central pastime to such a broad cross section of the Australian community. It's sort of almost one of those sacred family activities, and to have that, yeah.
And it's just going to be super interesting as it unfolds over the coming weeks, and we find out more about the circumstances and what happened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, a good day.
Yes.
Good way to start the day with
Absolutely.
some news like that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it's actually almost the end of our day, but our guest, it's the start of hers.
It is.
Yeah. So I should probably introduce her in.
That's a good idea.
So this guest is based in the UK, and now that it's daylight savings over there, it's an 8-hour time difference. So we are having to make things fit. She's got a master's degree in workplace health and wellbeing from the University of Nottingham. She has been featured in HR journals, TV and radio, and is passionate about creating great places to work. She is the founder and CEO of Workwell Hub. Welcome to the podcast, Renee Clarke.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, really interesting. And it's amazing that in the UK, we haven't heard the story of the little girl. So, it's a huge relief for you guys. And as a parent myself, I can feel that.
Yeah, we're just talking about it, and we've all got similar age kids. So, it's. I think every parent can empathise with that family.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Renee,
thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So, can you tell us what are your favourite podcasts?
Well, obviously, Psych Health and Safety, that's a top one. And I'm really interested in anything HR related, workplace health related, because although I feel that I knew quite a lot about the industry, there's always more to learn. There's always new things coming up, and I like to sort of investigate what's working, what isn't, and why. So I'm always asking questions, and the degree makes you think that way. So if something's working really well, why is it working? How can we pass that on to other organisations? If something's not working so well, how can we pass that on? So listening to different podcasts in the HR and health and safety arena is always really good. I also follow lots of individual health and wellbeing podcasts because I think it's really important that we keep at the top of our game physically and mentally. And podcasts, I mean, when I started out in the industry, podcasts weren't out there, and now it's amazing that this knowledge is out there and shared. So yeah, so anything to do with health and safety, health and well-being, or HR, yeah, top features.
Any in particular that you would recommend to our readers or listeners? Sorry, readers.
Sorry, yeah, I haven't written them down actually, but there is Dr. Chatterjee in the UK. He's amazing. Oh, sorry, I've frozen now. I can't think.
That's
of it.
okay.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I can't think of the name of the podcast, but it's amazing. And he does like 5 tips on a Friday of what books he's reading about health and well-being. He does his top tips of exercise, nutrition. He's great, and he's written loads of books in the UK as well.
Fantastic. So can you tell us about your professional career so far?
Yeah, it started off very different, not in the world of workplace health and well-being. So when I started off, I started traveling actually. So I went to college for a year, and then I decided to travel. So I lived in a fair few different places. And then I came back and started working for the government. And I started in HR actually, just as an admin assistant. And then I progressed on, spent 10 years within the government, and finally ended up as an international trade advisor. So completely different to where I am now. While I was there, I experienced a period of stress, and it made me look at my own life. So I started doing night classes, looking at things like holistic therapies. So I trained in lots of different holistic therapies. And then I got the voluntary redundancy, which was amazing, because it just came at the right time. I realized that career wasn't for me. And I set about a business doing workplace health massage. So it was completely different to my career, traveling all over the world, helping organizations export. And I really enjoyed it. And while I was doing this massage to individuals, I realized that actually the workplace could benefit from this as well. So I set up a small partnership offering just workplace massage within organizations. And then skip forward a few years, I thought, actually, there's more to it than massage. People were asking me, so we worked with lots of local governments, and they were asking if we knew anybody that did stress management or biometrics testing. And I thought, actually, I know lots of people, why don't I bring them together, and we'll start this company where we're offering lots of different interventions. And it worked really well. And then I relocated, had my kids. So I moved from the middle of the UK down to the south, and I rebranded. So previously I was called Midlands Workplace Wellbeing, and set up a company called Workwell Hub. It sort of covered the whole of the UK. It was more about what we were about. And while I was down in the South Coast, I started thinking about that actually, although I knew quite a lot, I needed to know more. And that's when I went on the university degree with Nottingham University. And that opened so many different doors for me. And it changed my thinking completely. I'd never been academic. And it made me start doing so much more research. And that's what led me to the career that I've got now. So mainly focusing on the strategy side of things. That's where my passion lies. I can see what the problem is and then put a solution in place.
Fantastic. It's great to hear about different career paths, because we do sort of have quite a lot of people come on here that I guess follow, a more sort of traditional career path to get into this field. So it's always great to have guests on who have taken a different route, so that people can see how many avenues there really are available to get into this field of work. Yeah,
I think because I experienced workplace stress as well, with high targets and poor management, it sort of naturally led me down there. And I think everybody's got their own journey. And if you see the people that are doing mental health training now, they've usually got a lived in experience. It's something that's happened to them in their life that set them on that journey. And I think, although the stress at the time was really, really horrible period to go through, I'm almost grateful, because it's led me to where I am now in a career that I really love.
Yeah, it's a bit like that sort of post-traumatic growth concept, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, well, I think you'd fit really well in with the team here, with your love of learning, going back and doing studies, after having a career before that. But I'm interested to know a bit more about your company. Obviously, you said there's been a bit of a shift in focus from when you set up in the Midlands. So tell us a bit about Workwell Hub and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so when I started the business, as I said, I'd suffered a period of stress. I realised that something more needed to be done within the workplace. And I realised that actually I knew so much that I could share this knowledge. So originally we started like a little forum in the Midlands and down here, where we just got organisations together. We shared best practice, and that was sort of my giving back to the community. So we had people like big people like Merlin Entertainments, and we did Cadbury's in the Midlands. So there were like big organisations all sharing their knowledge and experience with smaller organisations as well, and sharing best practice. And I realised that actually there's so much good things out there that we should bring these together. And then Workwell Hub was the natural name for it. It's a hub where we can share best practice. We give lots of free information out to clients. We're obviously writing newsletters and telling people about the latest news. And as well as a business, offering workplace health strategy training and consultancy, I want it to be more than that. I want it to be like a knowledge base where we can help people. The recent product to come out of Workwell Hub is a training course. So we do an online strategy course. And this was brought about that although I was working with larger clients, the smaller clients often haven't got the money to pay for a consultant, but they still wanted to learn, and they still wanted to improve their knowledge and experience and skills in this area. So it took me 2 years to write it, but I wrote a smaller course for SMEs. But actually, we've got organisations with 2,000 people on that course. So the strategy side for me is so important, and that's the heart of Workwell Hub.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people out there that offer, I guess, workplace wellbeing kind of services. You said you have a focus on strategy. Would you say that's your USP as a company?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, when I started years ago, there was health and safety, and nothing got done with the health. It was all about safety 12 years ago. It was just like touching the iceberg with the health side of it. And as I say, over those years, I realised that it's not just about the free fruit and the massages. It needs to be more strategic. If people want to see a big change within their organisation, the ad hoc activities are never going to work. They're going to give short-term gains, whereas organisations need the longer term. So the strategy side of it is my passion, and it helps organisations fourfold. It just takes them to a different level when that strategy is in place.
Yeah, definitely agree. There's a lot of scattergun approaches without the strategic thought and planning behind it.
Definitely, yeah.
So can you tell us then what is a workplace health strategy from your perspective?
Okay, yeah. So a workplace health strategy is basically the same as any other business strategy. It's a plan of action to get from A to B using strategic drivers. And when we talk about workplace health strategy, those strategic drivers are health and wellbeing driven. So we find these drivers within organisations by doing research. So our program works on 4 levels. So we do research, we do planning, we do delivering, and then we do analysing. So the research stage of any strategy is the most important. I've worked with so many organisations that literally pull a strategy off the shelf and start working with it. And it's not strategically driven, so they're never going to get the results they're hoping for. It's a piece of paper. So with the workplace health strategy, we do that research. We look at the organisation. So we look at the demographics of the people, what their absence trends are, management styles, and then we do surveys and research with the individuals. So what are their problems? How do they feel the workplace is treating them? Do they think their environment's good? How is their current health and wellbeing? What would they like to improve in their health and wellbeing? And when we talk about health and wellbeing, we look at mental, physical, social, financial, and then we call the other area organisational. So the strategy has to encompass that research side of it before any strategy is built.
Fantastic. We like evidence-informed strategies. Absolutely. That's our what's the word I'm thinking of?
Jam.
Wasn't the word I was thinking of, but it'll do. Yeah.
Good word.
So what are the benefits for an organisation of having a health strategy in place?
I think when organisations have this strategy in place, it gives them the focus, it gives them the structure, it gives them dedicated resource. So when the resource is pushed, they know that they've got to deliver what they've said they're going to deliver. Otherwise, it's going to be uproar within their organisation. It also gives them something to measure against, because if they don't know what's working or what isn't, how are they going to fix it? If they don't know what the starting point if they don't know what the starting point is, how are they going to know when they've reached their goal? So for us, the strategy is a really, really important part.
So it sounds like it's sort of giving them a map as well as holding them accountable to following that map, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. It gives them that accountability when the resource is low and the resource is pushed. It's making people responsible. It's looking at the senior management down to the shop floor. Everybody's got a role to play. It can't just be the CEO that everybody says, right, actually, that's not working, that's your fault. And it can't be the individual. It has to be that combined approach to get the right results.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? I'd be interested to hear around generic strategies versus bespoke strategies for organizations.
Okay, yeah, anybody can get a strategy. They can go on Google, they can download a strategy, they can copy somebody else's strategy, but you're never going to get the bespoke element. You'll probably get some results, but they're not going to be tangible, they're not going to be measurable. It's only when you gather that data that you're going to see those end results. So for me, I've been with organisations that have said, can you do a strategy review? And it's 5 years old, and they said they're going to review it after 2 years or a year, and it's never reviewed. So for me, an off-the-shelf strategy, it's just a piece of paper. It's there, gathering dust. It's very rarely looked at. That it's not tangible. You can't measure it. You can't change it. And with a strategy, it's supposed to be like a living document. So it needs to be going back to all the time to, as I say, to figure what's working, what isn't, and why. And if it's not working, what can we do to fix it?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I guess the first content clause in ISO 45003 is about understanding the organization and its context, because it's not typically a one-size-fits-all approach. You can pick up, like you say, a blueprint or a standard like ISO 45003, but you need to think about how does it actually fit into your organization and what specifically are you going to be measuring. Otherwise, I mean, obviously it's less likely to work, but I think it would go the way of a lot of activities where you just buy something off the shelf and you do it once. And then, like you say, it doesn't become a living, breathing thing. It just, let's just follow this through, or, it gets forgotten about because there's not the level of commitment required to follow the strategy through.
Yeah, and I think a strategy is all about the collaboration as well. So, it has to be collaboration. It can't just be a document that's produced by a HR team. It needs to be collaborated with. You need to look at stakeholders within the business. You need to look at the people on the floor. What do they want? What do they need for themselves? And I think the main importance of a strategy is it's about meeting needs. And that's the way I always look at it. It's got to meet the needs of the business and the people, because like the one without the other is never going to exist. So the business needs need to be met, but the employee needs need to be met also. So it's getting that fine balance.
Yeah, and that consultation piece is key, right? It's strategy isn't something that you do to people; it's something that you do with people. Yeah,
definitely. And I think the World Health Organization, they stress that in what a healthy workplace is, that collaboration is key.
So can you tell us, you've sort of talked a little bit about, the importance of encompassing all different elements of health. Can you talk a bit more about sort of what that holistic view looks like within your strategy?
Yeah, I think, as we know, to be mentally well, we need to be physically well as well. And we need to have social impact around us. We need those social connections. But the way we look at it is we go a couple of steps further than that. So our holistic view of workplace health and well-being is looking at the mental, the physical, the social, financial, and the organisational. And I think that's often where organisations, when they're putting their strategy together, fail. They try to put lots of health and well-being activities on, but they don't actually look at the root cause of a lot of the problems, which is the organisation. So for me, the holistic approach is vitally important, because if you don't solve where the problems are starting in the first place, it's like sticking a sticking plaster on a wound. It might heal, but it might keep coming back. It's you need to get to that root cause and solve the problem from happening in the first place. So yeah, a big part of our holistic view is looking at the organisational, looking at the psychosocial work environment. What are the demands like in the workplace? What are those relationships like? Is the communication channels good? Is change managed well? So it's really important that they take this holistic view and don't forget the organisation element as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sort of thinking about, I guess people, we're hearing a lot about people not wanting to work for jobs that don't pay them a living wage. And I guess that's sort of one of those root causes that sits behind it, isn't it? That, we'll give people access to, financial planning or something like that. But, if they're not earning enough to actually be able to live and they're living paycheck to paycheck, no amount of financial planning is going to help them.
No, definitely. I think within the organisation, as I say, we have like 5 streams, the mental, physical, social, financial and environmental. And we push organisations to do continual activity in all those 5 areas. So not just concentrate on mental health one month and social wellbeing another month. Every month should be full of activities or interventions. So it doesn't have to be a physical training course. It could be that your intranet page is updated with direction to financial support. It can be that you've got, I don't know if you have it in Australia, but we have like cycle to work schemes where they can get funding for bikes for cycling to work. Do they have a support program in place where if somebody is suffering financial difficulty, the organisation can do a payback loan? So it's getting them to think outside of the box of, like you say, the normal, right, here's a financial advisor, go and seek some advice. What can they do as an organisation to help support that? And when we look at the social element as well, the workplace is a great environment in which to promote social well-being. So when organisations are looking at activities that they're offering, how can they make it more socially engaging? How can they get people involved? Can they do a walking group that costs nothing of a lunchtime, but it gets that social interaction? So it's taking this holistic view and embedding it into the core of the business rather than just being a strategy on a shelf.
Mm.
Yeah, so I guess we've talked a bit about individual determinants of health and how they can be promoted through a wellbeing strategy. Where does Psych Health and Safety fit, given that it's more focused on systemic or addressing wellbeing systemically?
Well, when we put the strategy together, we look at the prevention, the intervention and the protection. And the Psych Health and Safety falls under all of those 3 elements. So we need to first make sure that the environment is fit for purpose. So it does protect, so it does stop poor health happening in the first place, especially mental health. Is the environment right to make people thrive rather than just survive in the workplace? And then we look at the intervention. So, okay, somebody is suffering with their mental health. What can we do to help them? Have we got an employee assistance program in place? Have we got the support there? Do we talk about mental health within the workplace? Is it common within the culture? And then we've got, like, as I say, the employee assistance programs, any training, return to work interviews. What can we do when somebody is suffering with their mental health? What can we do to make sure that the environment that they're coming back into is a good one and supportive? And then with the protection, it's okay, they're suffering with a long-term health condition. What can we do to help them? Is there somewhere we can signpost them to? Is there somewhere we can get specialist health? Can we make reasonable adjustments in the workplace for that person? So I think when we look at the psychological health and well-being, it falls into many different spectrums. As I say, the mental pillar of well-being and the organisational, but it can also be that social. How can we get those interactions going at work to help somebody, help them thrive?
Yeah, definitely. As you're saying, around the social elements, a lot of psych hazards are caused by breakdowns in that social side of things, whether that be relationship with supervisors or colleagues or bullying and harassment, sexual harassment, that sort of thing. So yeah, it makes sense.
It needs to fall into the whole environment, not just, I think my biggest bugbear is when people just talk about mental health in the organisation. So they're like, right, we need mental health first aiders. It's really important we have them. But then the rest of the business is absolutely lacking in all the other areas of well-being. The environment's poor, and these mental health first aiders are sitting there. I spoke to a company recently. I think they had like 20 mental health first aiders. They didn't know their name. They didn't know what department they were in. They had no record. They'd paid all this money to train them, and the culture just wasn't right. So having as many mental health first aiders as you need, if they're not being used and people haven't got that confidence to go and speak to them, there's no point. It's a tick box exercise. And that's where my frustrations come. It needs to be an holistic view, where you show you really care about the mental health and well-being of somebody, not just a tick box exercise. It needs to take that holistic approach to make sure the environment's good as well.
Yeah, we've had a chat before with Emily Pearson on the show about mental health first aiders and the unintended consequence of having new hazards emerge when you've got all these trained mental health first aiders and you're not supporting them properly. So yeah, there's a few issues with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's a great scheme. It's brilliant, but I think so many people want to go on it because they think it's the right thing to do, and it's not always the right thing to do. Getting the environment right is the main thing, and the first aiders can follow that. Yeah,
and I mean, there's an element as well of just recognizing where mental health first aid sort of fits into the overall strategy. Was it Tim Marsh who was saying, when my mum dropped me off for work at the smelters on my first day at work, and the floor supervisor didn't come up and say, well, don't worry, we've got a lot of first aiders here that can look after Tim if he gets hurt. And, that didn't send her away there with a sense of confidence that Tim was going to be safe at work. Just having first aiders there in case it all goes horribly wrong isn't really the ideal intervention point.
No, that does sound like a Tim Marsh thing to say, though. Yeah.
No, but it's a really good way of looking at it. It simplifies it for people. And yeah, like I say, they're a great resource, but alone, they're not going to solve the problem. It's that sticking plaster again. We've got a sticking plaster, we can put it on, but we're never going to solve why that cut keeps happening in the first place.
Yep. So now you were talking about offline, we were talking about the 6 mental health core standards that you developed. Can you tell me a bit about that? How did you identify them?
Oh, right. Okay. So the core standards weren't actually set by me. They're something that we run in the UK. And it came up in 2017. There was a report called the Thriving at Work report. I don't know whether you've heard of it over there. So it was produced for the government by Stevenson and Palmer, and it looked at ways to improve mental health in the workplace. And it was a set of 6 standards. We use these standards within everything we do in the UK. Well, organisations should. They're a set of standards. They haven't got to be followed, but they're a really good guidelines to create mentally healthy workplaces. So the standards are about producing, implementing and communicating a work plan. And when they talk about a work plan, we look at that as a strategy. So it's about getting all the eggs in a row. So you can address the whole issue with poor health and well-being in the workplace, not just the mental elements. It's producing, implementing and communicating a plan. So I think that's really important, because a lot of people produce, but they don't actually implement it and they don't communicate it. So that's a really key aspect of that. Develop mental health awareness among employees. And as I say, it can be via various methods. It hasn't got to be that you're doing mental health training all the time. It can be via the intranet page. We've done pull-out guides for organisations. So for an organisation that's got people on the road, for instance, who don't have access to technology, they had a pull-out guide. And these were people that were like carers within houses, maintenance people, workmen on the road, and also surveyors. So they said, sometimes they haven't got access to things, but they're experiencing mental health issues right in that moment. They don't know where to go. So we did a big pull-out guide for one organisation, and there were like 2,000 leaflets gone to all of their staff. So everybody had access to something. And I think that's a really key point when we talk about awareness, that so many organisations put something on an internet page, but not everybody has access to that. So it's about making sure that everybody has access in one form or another. And again, that comes down to the research. You need to know your audience and what access they have to technology. The third one is open conversations about mental health. And again, this is about the culture. If you say that you're going to have an open door policy and we're great about mental health, but the doors are always shut and there's nowhere to go, or the mental health first aiders are trained, but nobody can go to them and ask them for help. So it's really important that those communication channels are open, and we create that culture of well-being where it's not a taboo subject. And I think one of the great things I say is, if you're doing something, write about it, speak about it. If the CEO's suffered with mental health, get him to do a video, get him to do a little vlog and send it out to the staff saying, look, you're not alone, I've been there. And it's the only way that these doors and these barriers are going to be broken down, is by opening that communication up and letting people know it's normal. Number 4 on there is about providing your employees with good working conditions. And again, this is where the organisational pillar of wellbeing comes in. You know, are the conditions good? Not just the psychological, but the physical conditions there. If the air conditioning is not working, or you're working in a grotty building, or there's no access to clean water or great food, then again, that's going to affect people's mental health and well-being. So making sure that the organisation and the working conditions are good. Another one is about promoting effective people management. And this is, again, making sure those relationships are good, and the training's there for people. It's not an easy thing. If the culture's broken, it takes a lot to fix it, but it is doable. And I think people think, oh, it's just a poor culture, we can't, you know, it's never going to change, this is the way we've always been. But actually, just one good person going in there and spreading it like little spiders' webs is going to have that trickle effect. And the 6th one is routinely monitor employee health and well-being. And I think this is where the strategy really comes into its own, because, as I say, it needs to be monitored. You need to know what's working, what isn't, and why. And if you've just got that piece of paper, you don't know what you're going to measure against. You haven't got any key performance indicators. You don't know where the problems lie. So you're just going to keep doing it and offering ad hoc activities. So, you know, being able to monitor where health and wellbeing is, and know that you're making a big improvement is really, really important. So the 6 standards, they're there as a guidance, but if you've got a strategy in place, all of those 6 standards would be met, because you will feed that into your strategy. So it's really important. And it's a great report. If anybody gets access to the internet, to go onto it, it's called Thriving at Work by Stevenson and Palmer. It's worth a read, definitely.
We will add that to the show notes for any listeners who want to get hold of that. So I think, I mean, you've sort of explained how those core standards feed into your broader health strategy. Do the other aspects of health also sort of align with those 6 standards?
Yeah, as I said before, I think that to be mentally well, you need to be physically well as well. You need that social support. You need that financial well-being. So those core standards, although they're aimed at mental health and well-being, I think it's about creating a thriving environment. So it's vitally important that those you take that holistic view and those needs are met. So it's not just about mental health and well-being. And as I said before, that's where my biggest gripe comes. They're the mental health core standards, but we need to look far further than that. It's a bigger picture. It's not just about mental health. It's, okay, what happens, what feeds into that mental health and well-being? It doesn't just happen, poor mental health. It's a lot of different factors that lead into there. So making sure that environment is good, and those 6 pillars, those 5 pillars of well-being, the mental, physical, social, environmental, and organisational, are met.
Yeah, well, Renee, as the saying goes, you know, if you fail to plan, you can plan to fail. Obviously, building a strategy. No, Joel didn't like that one. Okay, so listeners will have to watch the video to see the reaction.
I was shaking my head in disappointment, listeners.
Yeah, no. We're talking about actually how a picture tells 1,000 words, but Joelle's facial expression tells probably 20,000 words. So look, you obviously spend a bit of time in your role helping companies to develop a wellbeing strategy. So what process do you follow with your clients to develop strategies?
Yeah, I mean, we usually start at the top. So if we've got a client come to us, we like to know about the organisation first. As I said, about the culture is really, really important. we like to look at the values of an organisation and what the vision and mission of that organisation is, because if you can find that out from them and get into the psyche of the company, then you can see how successful the strategy is going to be, really. So looking at the values, vision and mission of the organisation will allow you to build the vision and mission for your strategy. And they are really, really aligned. If the vision for the wellbeing vision is like really far out and the company vision is way back, it's never going to align. They need to be aligned. So we always start with the values, vision and mission. And then we go through the research stage, as I said earlier, looking at the organisational needs, looking at the individual needs. And the next stage is really important. It's about evaluating those needs, doing a SWOT analysis and coming up with some key drivers, because from that analysis, you are going to find out loads of things that are wrong, loads of things that are right, but loads of things that are wrong and need improving. And you're not going to be able to improve all of them at the same time. So once we've done that SWOT analysis, we try to come up with 5 key drivers. And those are the drivers that will be embedded in this strategy. And those drivers are often similar within organisations. So it's like to reduce sickness absence, to improve retention, to improve culture, to improve presenteeism. So there's usually a similar pattern. So we've got those core goals, and then we try to build objectives against those goals. And that's where we start to really break it down. So the objectives are going to be specific and measurable. So we follow like the SMART standard. And for that, for instance, if it could be like to reduce sickness absence, one of those objectives could be to support mental health and well-being, or improve mental well-being, or to reduce cases of poor mental health within the workplace. So you'd get a core objective, and then we'd break that down even further of, okay, what little elements can we do to help do that? So it may be to improve mental health and well-being of the workforce. Okay, so what do we need to do to get there? And it would be broken down. It would be given to somebody as a task. So it's like, who's going to do it? When are they going to do it? What are they going to do and how? And there's also going to be resources behind that objective. So it's not just about training somebody. It's about saying, look, these are the different supports you've got in-house. So there's HR, there's mental health first aiders. These are the resources outside. So links to charities and helplines. And it's about building this bigger picture. So we've got the goals, we've got the objectives, and then we've got this framework. And then below the framework, there'd be a calendar of events for individuals. So people within the organisation don't see the top level stuff. They just see this calendar of events. They see the strategy of why it's being done. And they see this calendar of events that it's going to be filled with all these different activities or signposting or support. And that's how the strategy is built. So you've got the values, vision and mission, the goals, the objectives, then this framework and calendar. And then the next areas are how do we deliver that? How do we get people engaged in it? Because it's great having this calendar, but if you don't actually get the engagement of the workforce, or they don't know about it, it's not communicated great, it's not fun, then they're not going to take part in it. So we've worked with organisations that have put health events on, and not many people have turned up because there's nothing in it for them. It's focused on one area, whereas if they spread it across the board, across those holistic pillars of wellbeing, there's always going to be something for somebody to dip into. And then at the end of it, we look at how do we execute it and review it. So it follows a pyramid style, starting at the top, and then the end is the execution and evaluation.
Yeah, now it sounds like how you're structuring it, you're really planning for how you're going to measure it from the outset anyway. Obviously, you want to get baseline and then post-intervention measurement anyway to demonstrate the effectiveness. The comms piece that you mentioned, I think that's really important, and definitely one of our new team members, Alicia Pappas, that's exactly why we brought her on board. There's a lot of people that have the best of intentions, and they might even purchase a subscription to our product and start rolling it out, but then it's poorly communicated. Engagement suffers because people aren't aware of the why or how. One of the things that Alicia does as head of customer success is just make sure that our customers have those comm pieces ready to go, so that they can explain to people and engage with them regularly. Because like you say, you might be doing great activities, but no one turns up because it's poorly communicated.
And I think that's it. It's got to be communicated well. people have got to look at it, what's in it for me? Because if it's a talk or a poster and it doesn't appeal to me, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to be interested in it. And that's where the variation, the calendar with lots of different activities comes in. And the same with yourself. It's the what's in it for me. Is it worth my time? Is it worth my investment? What am I going to gain out of going to that training course or watching that video or attending that webinar? So the communication, it's got to be on point. What are they going to get out of it? Not just this is another training video. What am I going to get out of it? What is it worth my time?
Yeah, it has to be a real sell, right? Because what we find is the people who probably most would benefit from those types of events and activities are the people who are really overworked and are suffering from, high job demands, but they're the ones who are least likely to take it up because they don't have time to do it. So, I think they really need a compelling reason to go.
We find that a lot in the education sector with the academics. They know they need it, but they don't actually want to go. And whether that's for a lot of people, not just in the academic area, but a lot of people feel that they'll lose face if they go and talk about their, what something about their mental health. Oh, that shows that I've got a condition, or that shows that I'm suffering, and it's going to show a weakness. Whereas if you promote it as, this is a well-being event, this is how you can get the best out of your mental well-being, rather than this is another mental health workshop. It's the words you use to try and to get the people, like you say, the hardest to reach, that need to be there. How do you get them there? How do you break those barriers down?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that has to happen is that, if you're going to do those sorts of activities, that employers actually need to give people the time to do them, and not just fit it in as an additional thing on top of your work. But hey, we're going to all do this collectively as a team. Everyone's going to, we had a staff PD, assigned for everyone. Everyone's going to come do it at once versus, if you've got time, come down at lunchtime and we're going to do this event together.
I think that's really important. You get lots of moans when people say, oh, I've been forced to do this. I've been told I've got to go. It's compulsory. But actually, everybody in the room comes out and they've gained something, and they wouldn't have gone there if it wasn't compulsory. So it's really anything that's going to engage people and sort of take them away, like you say, from their normal tasks. It's going to be a hard task to get them there, but it's got to be appealing, I think. And we always say, make it fun and engaging. Fun and engaging doesn't appeal to everybody, but if it is fun and it is engaging, and often when you make it like that, you attract the people you don't think. We've done belly dancing down quarries, and we've done Tai Chi with like busky builders and things like that. So you don't think those people are going to be the people that go, but actually they think, oh, it's fun and it's away from my mundane things. So it's about offering a plethora of interventions that will appeal to somebody at some point.
Yeah.
So hoping that you can maybe share a case study or an example of a success story, and recognizing confidentiality and all of that sort of thing. Do you have a story you can share with us about a really effective outcome following the implementation of a health strategy?
Yeah, I think the one I'll probably use, just because again it's about what people think is the problem, and actually it's something completely different. So we had an organisation approach us to do their whole strategy. So they weren't on the course, or they didn't want just a little bit of intervention. They wanted us to take over the whole process for them. They were going through lots of change and redundancy, and they said that engagement was really, really low with the stuff that was left behind. So we started the research. We did all the organisational research and the individual research. We did all the analysis, and we found out what the key drivers were. And as we were going through and we were analysing, so doing the SWOT analysis of the findings, engagement was really high. Although this organisation thought that people weren't engaged in their work, the engagement levels were really high. They were engaged in their work. They really loved the work they were doing. They were passionate about it. But actually, the problem was the relationships. They felt they couldn't communicate with their managers. They felt that relationships were really poor. Nothing was communicated well. So this big change that they were going through wasn't communicated well. So for us, it was really great because we could go back to the organisation and say, look, they are engaged in their work. It's the culture that's poor. And it's a hard thing to tell somebody when they think their culture's okay, and it's just the staff that aren't engaged. But go back and having that conversation and saying, right, how can we put this right? What steps can we do to make the culture better? How can we make people feel that they are valued in that environment, that their needs are listened to? You know, they want to be part of this communication channel. They don't want to be told what's going to happen. They want to be part of it. They want to be a collaboration. So that was a completely different thing from saying, this is your return on investment. This is where we started to there. But for me, it was really important because it identified that organizations think they know what people want and what they're going through. And actually, it's often a very different story. And the same can be said with like mental health cases. They think they've got very low mental health cases within their organization. We do the questionnaires, and actually people own up to say, you know, I am under the doctor, I am on medication, and the statistics vary so much, but that gives the organization then the tool that gives them the confidence to go and tackle that issue. Whereas before it was sort of swept under the carpet. When they know they've got a problem, they have to do something about it. They can't hide away any longer. So yeah, I think the research part of putting a strategy together is the most important thing, because the findings always astound people.
Do you find that it's easy to get organisations across the line about the importance of that research? Because I would imagine you'd have a lot of them that come in and say, look, this is our problem. Tell us, you know, we want you to give us a strategy to fix it. And you're saying, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my own research and find out for myself. So how does that go?
Yeah, I think you're always going to play devil's advocate when you're a consultant. You know what needs to be done. Another example, for instance, is we've got an organisation that we're supporting. We've developed this questionnaire, which I actually used within my university, my paper, and it looks at lots of various scientific questions. So it looks at that mental health scale, it looks at wellbeing, it looks at engagement. There's lots of different scientific elements to it. And they wanted to use it. And it's also got the health and safety exec standards, which are the UK standards for stress. So they wanted to use it. And as I say, we say about having key stakeholders involved from the outset. Otherwise, you're going to put this strategy in place and the key stakeholders are going to come back. The trade unions are going to say, no, it's no good. Senior management are saying, no, we want this changed. And this organisation we're working with have been battling for 3 months to get this questionnaire signed off, because an organisation doesn't like a question about bullying. And for me, I'm saying, if you don't ask the question about bullying, how are you going to know you've got a problem? And I'm really pleased that the lady I'm working with is adamant this question's staying in, although the other people keep saying no. And it took 3 months of battling. But if you don't know the problems there, how are you going to fix it? So yeah, it's a real issue, and it is having that conversation to say, actually, you might think that's what the problem is, but it's not. We need to change it. We need to do the research to find out where the issues are. And I think that's a really good example, that they don't want the bullying question because they think they know there's no bullying, but actually there is bullying within the organisation.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. I guess that sort of that whole argument of I guess plausible deniability, and well, we didn't know this was happening, so we can't be held responsible for it. But that's actually not the case from a WHS law perspective. If something's reasonably foreseeable, which bullying is, if you're not actually assessing whether that's present in your workforce and monitoring it and addressing it, then you're failing to meet your obligations. Putting your head in the sand and saying I didn't know about it isn't a good enough reason.
It's like your example of corrosion, Joelle. You can't just think corrosion doesn't exist or I'm unaware of it.
Yeah, you know that it's a possibility and you have to monitor for it.
I think by asking for the question to be taken out, you're basically demonstrating you've got a problem with bullying, because otherwise you would leave the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you didn't think it was a problem, you wouldn't have an issue with the question.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that we come across lots of things like that where people think they've got it right, and we say, well, actually, you need to change this, this, and this. If you really want to, if you're really serious about improving health and wellbeing within your workplace. if you're not serious about it, carry on doing what you're doing. You'll never get great results. But if you want to see a change, then you need to follow a process.
Yeah, and I think people get scared if they do find an issue like that, then how do they address it? But I think it's all about continuous improvement, right? It's about going, well, let's implement a control, let's evaluate its effectiveness over time, rather than thinking they need to have a silver bullet to solve the issue once it's been identified.
I think that's it. People are often frightened when it comes to anything health and safety within the workplace. They're frightened, but as long as they follow that model of right, okay, assessing the risk and then making a plan, nothing's going to be solved overnight. You're not going to eradicate bullying in the workplace overnight. You're not going to create a great culture of well-being overnight. It takes time and it takes planning, and that's where the strategy comes into place.
Well, Renee, I've got to say it's been quite an interesting discussion with you today, talking all about strategy, and it's not really a topic that we've gone into depth. So I think our listeners will find this discussion really valuable. So thank you so much. One of the questions that we ask all of our guests on the show is to think about the future of workplace mental health and what your hopes for that future would be.
I think it's about breaking down the barriers so people feel confident to speak up about who they are. It's about authenticity. It's about allowing people to be who they are, whether they're at work or whether they're at home, to be their true self. So if they have got a mental health condition, to be able to speak about it. We're seeing lots more about equality and diversity where people are coming into work as their true self. And I think if somebody can come in as their true self, in their identity, they should be able to come into work as their true self in their mental health state that they're in on that particular day and get the support they need. I think that's probably the simplest way I could put it. We're all individual. If we were all the same, it would be a horrible world to live in. And being diverse and having different mental health and wellbeing needs makes it a great world. And yeah, I think we should embrace people's health and wellbeing.
Yeah, in the same way that we embrace, physical disability, for example, and making accommodations and, making sure that, people feel welcome regardless. So, I'd love to see that. That would be a brilliant picture of the future.
I think we are seeing it. It's starting to change. People are talking about their disabilities more. We're seeing more inspirational people who have got a story to tell in health and wellbeing roles within organisations. So there's one person I know within a big company who's got bipolar, and he regularly talks about it, and it's brilliant. And it's great for the company as well, because he's saying, look, they've employed me in this role and I've got bipolar. I have bad days, I have good days, but they're accepting me for it. And I think, to me, that is the way the world should be going forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's great to see these really prominent people get up and talk about it as well, like Naomi Osaka, for example, who stepped down from media commitments because of anxiety. Yet she was still able to play a big part in the Tokyo Olympics with the lighting of the cauldron, which is amazing.
Mm.
Yeah, it's by, I think, like I say, being your true authentic self and not being afraid. She could have not faced that fear and carried on and crumbled, but she didn't. She stood up, and it's only when people come to the forefront and talk about it that we're gonna change things. So yeah, it's really positive.
Yeah.
So for people who are listening, who are thinking about maybe making a move into the psych health and safety field of work, do you have any advice that you'd like to share with them?
I would say read every paper out there, listen to every podcast, just build your knowledge up, because you're never going to know everything. Sign up to every newsletter. I have newsletters pop in my box every day with like new papers that have been done, new white papers, and I'm always learning. So be open to learning what's out there. Don't stay stagnant in thinking you know it all. It's really important that you keep that continual development, because things are changing. And if you were brave enough to go on to a master's degree course, I would say Nottingham University. The course was amazing. The professors were great. And I learned so much from it. And I would say that was, although I'd worked in the field for a long time, it was just like the pinnacle of of my learning. So yeah.
There is real benefit, I feel, in going back and studying after you've been in the workforce for a little while, because it really does make your learning that much more grounded in reality. And I feel that, you know, the ability to apply what you're reading to your experiences really enhances your learning as you're going through that.
Definitely. You think you know a lot, and then you realise you actually know like a minuscule amount. But it's great because I think that's the part of life's journey, is to keep learning. So yeah.
Yeah. What's that curve of like amount that you think that you know about something versus the amount that you actually know about something, and it sort of Mount Stupid is like the peak of the
Kevin knows the name of that. He's mentioned it a number of times.
Yes.
I can't remember it off the top of my head. Renee, where can people find out more about the Workwell Hub?
We've got a website, which is www.workwellhub.com. If people were interested in downloading a free ebook on building a workplace health strategy, which talks about the pyramid that we go through, about the values, vision, mission, goal setting, objectives, you could drop me an email at hello@workwellhub.com. and I can send that over to you. It's a free ebook. It's about 5 pages long, but it talks you through that step-by-step process.
Yeah, that would be really useful, I think, for listeners who, really liked how you laid out your strategy. Yeah, thanks for that. That's a very kind offer. Well, Renee, it's been, like I said, a great discussion. The first time we've really gotten into strategy discussion, and it's really needed because we do see a lot of well-intentioned people out there who kind of fail to see things through because they failed to plan and get that strategy right from the outset.
Mm.
Cool.
You didn't shake your head at me that time.
I didn't, because you didn't come around with the other half of the pun, so I let it slide.
Okay, Renee. Renee, thank you so much. But that, listeners, brings us to the end of today's episode. So don't forget, we do video these while we're on the Zoom call with our lovely guests, and you can check out that video on the FlourishDX YouTube page. You can also find little snippets of these conversations on the LinkedIn page for FlourishDX. And while you're on LinkedIn, then Joelle and I, you'll find, are there constantly, probably too much, but we love continuing the conversation through that channel. So feel free to reach out to us and do that. But that brings us to the end. We'll catch you next episode.